I think that we are building something, kind of like Terence McKenna alluded to. I think we're building it.
Yeah.
You know, because so much of life, you know, if you really sit and think for hours about the meaning of life, you're going to come to some conclusion of like, it's possible that you come to a conclusion that this thing's kind of like a strange loop. It's kind of beginningless, endless, you know, sort of meaningless. But in the process, we collectively are building something. And I think what we're building is going to be some technological phenomenon that plays into all this spiritual stuff.
Yeah.
It's bizarre,
Yeah.
I know, and
I love it. I'm excited for it. Bring it on. Welcome, modern day mystics, fellow truth seekers, James and Justin, back at it again with another reaction video. In this one, we are taking a look at Buddhism. And this is another Cogito video. We did one on Sikhism, kind of explaining the basics, the foundation of Sikhism, all that stuff. And we had a good response, and people were asking us to do other videos on other faiths and practices and religions and stuff like that. So we're going to take a look at Buddhism today.
love Buddhism. I want to do a video on Zen Buddhism. Like, if religions were playing cards, I would really cherish my Buddhism card.
All right. Well, this one's a little lengthy, so we'll just get right into it and come and join us.
Buddhism, the religion probably most associated with peace, tranquility, and bald guys. One of the oldest surviving religions, Buddhism started 2,500 years ago in India and is now the world's fourth largest religion. With over 520 million followers, or 7% of humanity, almost all located within this circle. And if you live outside of this circle,
That's a crazy factoid. Almost all
Almost all or what?
located in
Oh.
that circle.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I don't know if you see and maybe in Canada and Toronto, because it's so multicultural, you might find like a Buddhist temple or something like that. But it's probably might not be something you find all over the world.
I think in the West, you get a lot more people like casually practicing it. You know what I mean? Like, namaste. But I think maybe he's referring to like the bald, dedicated monk type people.
Hardcore.
You know, sometimes you will see them in the city or something, like a monk walking down the street, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
you know, you can tell who they are.
Yeah.
you most likely don't know a lot about Buddhist belief. So what is Buddhism? Who is the Buddha? And is life just an endless cycle of pain, misery, disappointment, and death? Well, let's find out.
Cogito.
So, who was the Buddha? Well, let's travel back 2,500 years into the past. Around 480 BCE, the Buddha was born as Prince Siddhartha Gautama in modern-day Nepal, right here. Siddhartha's dad was a powerful ruler of a Hindu republic, but due to a prophecy, he was terrified that Prince Siddhartha would become a religious leader instead of taking his place on the throne. To avoid the prophecy, he hid all human suffering from Siddhartha. Siddhartha lived in fancy palaces, had the finest clothes and jewellery, ate and drank what he pleased, and married a beautiful bride.
I'm actually reading the Epic of Buddha right now, and I'm not the best reader in the world, you know. So but it's interesting. I just got to the part where the sage comes in and gives this prophecy, and I think what has happened, you know, I'm really sorry if I somehow got this wrong, is that the Buddha's mother, the queen, died, and the father's kind of in mourning and everything, the king, and then the sage comes to visit, and the sage, like, upon seeing the baby Buddha, like, starts crying and like I think prostrates himself and is like, that's the one. That baby's gonna be a great person.
Wow.
Just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I hope that added something.
His dad fired all the sick, ugly, and aging servants, and no one could speak to Siddhartha about any of life's miseries, like death. This could obviously never backfire. Siddhartha felt a deep sense of dissatisfaction with this luxurious life of his. At 29 years old, after finally being allowed to go on a trip outside the palace, Siddhartha saw an old man, a sick man, and finally a corpse. He spiraled into an existential crisis. He thought, why do anything in life when old age, sickness, and death would get everyone eventually? Anyway, on another visit outside, Siddhartha came across a homeless monk that had given up all possessions. This guy seemed pretty wise and happy. So Siddhartha decided that he would abandon his princely life and become a wandering monk in search of an answer to life's suffering. Siddhartha spent the next 6 years learning from India's greatest yoga and meditation masters. Then he joined a group of hermits in the forest that practiced extreme fasting and intense meditation. After 6 long years of eating nothing but seeds that had blown into his lap, Siddhartha was little more than a living skeleton. He realized he wasn't any closer to an answer to suffering. In fact, the starvation had clouded his thinking. He was even further away from an answer than when he had started 6 years ago. Something clicked. The path to enlightenment lay between the extremes of a prince's life of luxury and a hermit's life of starvation, and so he started to eat again. Re-energized, Siddhartha sat beneath a tree and vowed to meditate until he found an answer to life's suffering. In a deep state of meditation, Siddhartha sat there for days. He realized that by ending desire, he could end suffering. We only suffer because we want things to be a certain way. His fear of aging, sickness, and death slipped away. He realized all things were always changing, and the only thing he could do was accept and love those changes. Freed from desire, his mind and senses purified, he was filled with a sense of joy and compassion for everything on earth.
I've long been fascinated with how enlightenment plays out for the individual, different kinds of people. You know, because it's like you could really think about what that guy just said for a long time. The acceptance of change and accepting all the forms that there are out there. You know, I accept it. I accept the reality that's before me and the changes that happen and that which is beyond my control and that which I think is my control, which is really just an illusion, and all these different things, like deep, deep, deep acceptance.
It's so relatable. Like everything that was said there, it's so relatable. How, you know, you got these worries about how life happens. You got future and past kind of playing off of each other and constantly trying to fill those carnal desires and stuff like that. And it clouds the mind, the soul, and you get lost in all of it. And I think what we're learning here is kind of finding that inner peace revolving around
I'm
that,
saying,
kind of letting go of the control of all that.
That inner peace, when it comes to different individuals, how does it manifest and play out? Like there's lots of people that have been on the same kind of path as Buddha, you know, living ascetic lives and, you know, doing different things. And then the vessel from which experiences that deep acceptance and of all these things, how does it, is it all the same thing? Do you get, if you had a room of 10 enlightened guys, would they be the same thing because they've all arrived at the same conclusion? Would they all start talking a certain way? Or are there people that are enlightened that understand this, that are high energy? Are there people that understand this that are, you know, you would never know? How does it play out for the individual? How does it play out depending on biology, intelligence, circumstances, if the person's wealthy versus if the person has got notoriety and status versus somebody that's got none of that, like a 7-Eleven worker, you know, or some kind of job that's just sort of a minimum wage job. And what if they get enlightened?
Maybe there would be character types that you wouldn't find. If someone had found inner peace, maybe you wouldn't find them riled up all the time or anxious, worrying about certain things.
But that's an internal thing, you know? People put their perceptions onto other people. You know, it's really at the end, it's an internal thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, and
I was just talking about like outer manifestations, maybe. It seems like it might contradict itself if you're.
But
like,
there are.
I found inner peace, and then you're a maniac.
But that you could be a maniac and be like, I found internal peace, and I'm real chilled out. Like, watch. Well, I'll demonstrate. That's very clever. And I actually think you're overthinking it, and that the truth of this is really just peace and bliss. You know? Do you understand? Like, you can behave however way you want, but either you got it or you don't got it. This rare thing that religions have been built around, and so many people have gone before us attempting this. I think we understand it at different levels. I think that there's people that might even cognize this differently,
Yeah.
It's like this person over here is...
You mean like understand this message differently, like what he's saying?
Understand it, live it, everybody's different, right?
Yeah.
So if you've got somebody with like a deviant brain, they're on the spectrum, or they're all the different kinds of people that there are. How does that manifest and play out? Even the way they cognize with their gray matter the event of what's about to happen here, what we're about to see little cartoon Buddha have happened to him. He's dawning on enlightenment. Not everybody's the same vessel. We inhabit different vessels, right?
Yeah.
And then you kind of get to wear your costume. You get to like pick your costume. I've heard other people that claim to be enlightened or awakened talk about putting their garment of ego back on, and then facing the world like, this is just the one I chose to wear,
Yeah.
If, say, there's a war going on and you get enlightened, you're in the middle of the battlefield and a war goes on, do you lay your guns down? This is just something I've long thought about,
Yeah. No, good, valid
So who's
points.
the verifier? Who verifies the authenticity of enlightenment? Is it part of a system where you go and somebody like touches both sides of your shoulders with the thing? Or is it an internal verification?
Yeah. Well, let's keep watching, see where this takes us.
Under that tree, now called the Bodhi tree, Siddhartha achieved enlightenment, or Nirvana. He was now an awakened one, a Buddha. So, how exactly did the Buddha become enlightened? Well, luckily, he laid out a handy-dandy guide for everyone to follow. First, there's the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths are the basis of Buddhism. The first Noble Truth is, life is suffering. Oh, wait. I know this sounds dark, but it's actually not. The actual first truth is that life is dukkha, which is an ancient Sanskrit word that normally translates to suffering in English. But it's more like dissatisfaction. Life will always be dissatisfying because humans cling to temporary things. Knowing about old age, sickness and death, that's dukkha. Things changing when you don't want them to change, that's dukkha. Not getting what you want, that's also dukkha. And things never measuring up to your expectations, that's also dukkha. Dukkha suggests that even when life is not physically painful, it can be disappointing and unfulfilling. The second noble truth.
So that plays a little bit into what I'm talking about, right? You get one person that gets enlightened, and they just so happen to be runner-up for next master of the monastery, happens to be. And then you get another person that's enlightened, and they answer phones at some sales company.
Yeah, both seem possible.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So it's enlightenment seems to me, but I feel like there would be some people, I'm sure we'll hear about it in the comments, that would be like, no, if you're enlightened, that's exceptional, and you attain some kind of like worldly position along with it. And I'm like, I don't read that. I read that the physical world is like, I'm sure it would affect the way you do things, and it might make you streamline and be better at making decisions and understand wisdom a little bit better. But I don't know that it's like, can people tell how many enlightened people are walking around out there? It's like, if you encounter an enlightened person, is it like a thing to behold? Wow, this person's radiating this. And would that still be the case if you took them out of a holy situation and put them into like just a person you were passing on the street? Would it still be like, start a religion, holy shit, let's follow this guy down the street? I just got all these questions in terms of this kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think there are few actually who decide to take on that role of like a guru,
right,
or like a
bodhisattva
practitioner. Because I think it comes with a lot of responsibility. So I kind of lean towards what you're kind of thinking, where I think there are people that come to some type of awakening or enlightenment, and they just go on with their life. And I can think back into my past, and I think sometimes I'm like, I think that guy, might be it. He's like very quiet, down to earth, just does his own thing, and plays his part.
What part of the body becomes enlightened, right? Like, say you've got somebody with a predisposition to anxiety or something, right?
Yeah.
And then their mind is enlightened, and now they're just like, I watch my anxiety now. Your hand's shaking when you go to pour that drink. What are you doing? What the fuck? Let's mess with them. Like, shit, I was enlightened a minute ago, but like I'm still an organic being.
Yeah.
Like, where does it become magical? Where does it become a thing of like, people don't say that shit to me anymore? Like, does that ever, or is it just you still got to deal with the world? Nothing changed about the world. Yeah, deep in there, you're enlightened, or does it like
maybe just based from your perception?
I have heard people say like it changed their physiology too, though. Like, whoa, my trauma just like evaporated out of my body,
Yeah.
And then they're like got this deep like presence and calm.
But
so just questions.
Yeah,
Obviously, I'm not enlightened.
Perception, I think, might be a big part of this too, right? How the way you're perceiving what someone should look like or be enlightened versus what another person's perception is. But anyway.
Truth is that dukkha is caused by desire. Humans desire and cling to possessions, people, power, and life itself. So they end up constantly disappointed because all of those things end. People want things they don't currently have and want things they currently have to never change. But everything is always changing. Everything we think we already own is really borrowed. We want to live forever and we want our loved ones to stay the same forever. But you can't catch a running stream. You can't have a permanent relationship with an impermanent world. It always ends in disappointment. Eventually, you discover that the bottomless breadsticks are in fact bottomed. Desire fuels suffering in the same way that wood fuels a fire. Fire consumes everything that you feed it and will always demand more fuel. The only way to kill a fire is to stop feeding it breadsticks. The Buddha taught that the secret to a happy life is to enjoy what you have without attachment and to not want what you don't have. The third noble truth is that there is an end to suffering. Since we cause our own suffering, we can also cure it. You can't change.
Think of the power of that message is to accept what you have and not, endlessly desire what you don't have. There are people that would put a real wrench into their business model. It's like the whole foundation of this model is convincing people they need something.
It seems like the foundation of like the entire system that we live within is like to acquire more.
Right. So how hard is that to actually embody and grasp?
Yeah.
Sounds like a tall order. I don't desire things anymore. Well, then I'm taking it because you don't even want it. The world's not going to not continue to be the way it is.
Maybe,
some people retreat to monasteries, man.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that.
What do you mean?
That the world is not going to continue to be the way that it is. I think.
Oh well, yeah. No, it's gonna. The world changes and evolves. That's true. You're right. But I mean is like, is it true that if you discover something that's completely a personal transformation or realization, that you go out into the world and people are going to validate that for you, or are people going to like take advantage of that, or are people going to?
In the current system, I think so.
Do people ever get obsessed and infatuated with this idea and then be like, I think I got to go join a monastery. The world is not validating my enlightenment, so I'm going to take off.
Yeah.
You guys are all corrupt. Like, you don't sound very enlightened anymore, man. I thought this was all about acceptance. Yeah. You got to accept this shit, And I don't think that means carte blanche to now, like, well, acceptance is understanding. You got to get your hands dirty. So there's a part of me that still allows to know. I still think you shouldn't do bad, evil shit, even if everybody's doing it. You know, it's a lot of like, I can see people thinking like, you're overthinking this. But
no, I think you're just running through all the questions, and I think that's appropriate. When you watch a video like this, there's a lot coming at you. There's a lot of information, and you're just going to have to process it. It might be something that you have to watch again, which I'll leave a link in the description. Watch it again. Think about it.
Okay.
Change the things that happen to you, but you can change your responses. And the fourth noble truth is that the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path leads to the end of suffering. The Noble Eightfold Path, or the Middle Way, is an 8-step guide to deprogramming the desire-addicted brain. It might be called a path, but you should think of it more as a wheel with 8 spokes that you spin all together. The 8 parts are: right view. Right view is accepting the Four Noble Truths, that suffering exists and that by following the Buddha's teachings, there is a way out of it. Right thought. The Buddha said that your worst enemy cannot harm you as much as your own thoughts. Don't let negative thoughts like greed, fear, and anxiety cloud your mind. Fill your mind with positive ones like love, kindness, and compassion. Right speech. Focus on positive words and stay away from negative ones like gossip, hurtful words, and lies. These only cause yourself and others to suffer. Right action. The Buddha taught the philosophy of ahimsa, or non-violence. Instead of hurting others with your actions, you should try and have an endless love for all life. Good actions include conquering anger with love, evil with good, meanness with generosity, lies with truth, and smickety smashing that likety like button and clickety clacking the scribbity subscribe button. Bad actions include killing, stealing, drugs, and engaging in non-consensual sex. Right livelihood. Avoid jobs that involve death, weapons, slavery, the harm of animals, drugs, and any kind of exploitation. But livelihood isn't just occupation. Be an honest and kind parent, friend, and partner. The next three are related to meditation. You have right effort. Right effort builds on right thought. It means putting effort into welcoming and creating good thoughts and pushing out bad thoughts. Violence, hatred, greed, and anxiety all begin as negative thoughts. Using right effort in your little mind garden, you water your positive thought flowers so they grow. And in a garden full of kind and compassionate thoughts, greed weeds will find no space to grow. Right mindfulness. Mindfulness is paying pure attention in every moment. Remaining in the present without judging or labeling your experiences and without letting distracting thoughts bring you out of the present. If you're eating ice cream, eat ice cream. Don't let that memory of that one time you peed your pants at school and then slipped on your own pee and then everyone laughed and called you pee-pee pants mixed slippy pee because they were very uncreative, let's be honest, distract you from your delicious ice cream moment. Mindfulness helps you understand your mind and body so you can see what causes positive and negative reactions from you in each moment. Right concentration. While mindfulness is like a giant net catching everything, right concentration is like a laser. Right concentration is what people would recognize as meditation. Using right concentration, you focus your mind on a single thing while meditating, whether that be your breath or thoughts. The point is to focus on that one thing without distraction so you gain insight into reality. Concentration gives you insight into your thoughts and why they happen, so you can just nip them in the bud before you start desiring. Each of these 8 parts has endlessly complex additions and...
I think we should pause it right there. There's a lot there with those 8 good things, and he said right off the bat there that there was kind of like finding a balance. And for someone like me, and I'm not saying that that's right, that resonates. I'm kind of like a balanced person. I don't go too far to the right or the left. I'm comfortable, but that might be difficult for someone who skews very far one side, very far to the other side. The idea of like bringing things into like balance, because maybe life might require from you. You bring this point up a lot. Life sometimes requires from you unbalance, to be brash in a moment, or there's a reason why we're afraid of certain things, because sometimes they can save our lives.
Well, you can also say whatever you want to say you are. And this is the kind of thing that will make people angry, because a lot of that goes on this day and age. A lot of people, you can say whatever you want to say. You can be like, I'm just a very frugal, and I'm just I'm really into wisdom, and I'm just a super duper like chill person by my very nature. You could be saying that in a room of people that are like, come on, like freak out, freak out. Right? Yeah. And people will only do so long. Like intelligent people notice this early, and they're like, if you just resist people trying to push you into what they want you to be, then you can just sit in it, and over enough time, you will be perceived the way you want to be perceived. But you got to wait that out, because there are people that want you to be a spaz. There are people that want to. What are we going to ignore? That's real?
I would hate that we like I remember definitely what you're talking about in my early youth. that's like something that kids do.
Mhm.
They want to like see how far they can get you to. And I know adults do it too, but I would hope as we mature as adults that
Well,
that's something we do a little bit less.
If I went to a church, like a Christian church, and started talking about Buddhism, you know, my experience is that people aren't going to be like, tell us more about Buddha, oh wise seeker of the truth. You know, sometimes they'll gaslight you to death. Yeah. You'd be like, I don't even, you know, everybody's saying I'm wrong. These group of people, humans are social creatures, right? You can be like, my thing is I just really love like balance and peace and like frugal living. I never touch a drink of alcohol. You can say whatever you want to say you are. And especially if people don't know you, why wouldn't they take you at your word? It really boils down to what the truth is on the inside.
Yeah.
That's what it all boils down to. You know, there are people that make a good living by being frantic. Look at Russell Brand. You ever heard him talk? He's into yoga and everything. And he's like, and it's entertaining. And he's a millionaire, probably. You know, and he makes a good living doing that. So how do you want to be? And at the end of the day, how do you want to be effective as a human? And then even beyond that, what is your inner world really like? Because that's the final threshold that you gotta cross in the end.
Yeah.
It's your own actual experience. It doesn't matter what everyone else thinks, really.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Huh? Well.
So that's why I ask, like, is there an enlightened serial killer out there? That's like, I've had a long day of stranglings. And now I'm just gonna...
oh, jeez.
And people would be like, that's for friggin' blasphemy and evil. But think about it. It's the inner game at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what people perceive it is. There are people that have gone to prison and read books on books of spiritual literature, and you know, from their solitude and their confinement.
That was a good point you made about the serial killer. Let us know in the comments what you think about that.
Yeah, I want to know.
Can you have an enlightened serial killer? All right,
probably not, but
continue.
Extra steps that we don't have time to cover. The main takeaway is that the Buddha taught that the Eightfold Path would free people from suffering. Following this path does not mean you give up on life, abandoning friends and family, and to stop feeling all emotions. The truths and the path are about realizing that you won't find happiness by clinging to the world. Happiness comes from clearing your mind of desire and replacing it with joy and compassion for all things. Instead of trying to control what happens, you accept what happens and just enjoy every moment as it is. Along with the Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, there are other important Buddhist core beliefs, like karma. Karma is an ancient Sanskrit word meaning action, but actions that have consequences. When you commit good or bad actions, it causes a chain reaction that will later come back to you in this life or the next. Buddhists see karma more like a natural law, like gravity, rather than some sort of system of rewards and punishments. It's a system of cause and effect. Think of karma like seeds. As you sow, so shall you reap. If you plant a mango seed, you'll eventually get a mango tree. If you plant a murder seed, murder tree. Or the worst one of all, if you plant coriander, you go straight to hell. According to Buddhism, if you want to know about your past life, look at your present body. If you want to know your future life, look at your present mind. Even though karma affects your current life conditions, it's not destiny. Buddhism teaches that at every moment, each person can change and make their lives better. And when it comes to karma, intention matters. If you squash a little ant by accident, then you don't generate any karma. If you stamp on it with pure hatred and anger, as if it was coriander, then that will generate a lot of negative karma. Karma also influences how you'll be reborn after death. Rebirth. Buddhists believe we live in a beginningless and endless cycle of birth, suffering, and death, called samsara. When the Buddha reached Nirvana, he escaped from that cycle of rebirth. Desire and karma push the cycle on and on. When a life ends in one body, karma drags the life into a new body, with no memory of the previous life. Karma, even if it's good or bad karma, keeps people stuck in the cycle. The only way to break out of the cycle is to stop desiring, to stop suffering, and to stop the creation of karma and reach nirvana. Nirvana or enlightenment isn't a place you go. It's not heaven. It's a state of mind. The Buddha reached nirvana and then lived for another 45 years. And although some Buddhist traditions do have heavens and hells, they're all inside of the cycle. Nirvana is an escape from the entire samsara cycle. Nirvana literally means blowing out. You blow out the fire of desire. When you stop thinking of yourself as me and I, and instead fill yourself with compassion for all things. Once you do this, you stop generating karma, and so you stop being reborn. Anyone that wants to achieve nirvana can with the right effort. And that's why the Buddha spent the remaining 45 years of his life after enlightenment wandering about the Indian subcontinent teaching people how to escape suffering before he died at the age of 80. After Siddhartha's death, his community of monks known as the Sangha spread his teachings or dharma.
That's always been interesting to me, the idea of escaping the cycle of life and death, right? Because for most people, when you threaten their life, they're like, I want to live for, I'm going to live forever. Nice long old age. And the whole point of this is that you escape ever having to come back.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, I wonder if there's people that are like, I'm going to keep living like hell, man, and keep reincarnating and living like hell. And, but it's not that, because one of the first principles is that it's suffering or dukkha.
Yeah.
So like you do want, according to this belief system, you do want to escape it, but that's also...
Well, there's also the karmic path. So if you're like a deviant in the one, you'll probably be the recipient of the deviant in the next.
Right. But then the end goal is to escape the whole show.
Yeah.
The thing you're after most and is non-existence in this realm.
Yeah. And there are other philosophies, faiths, ideas about the afterlife outside of Buddhism that also,
obviously,
have this in mind too. Even that law of one thing that we talked about, that's relatively new. And the whole idea is about merging back with the oneness. So, just we'll have to keep going here.
Dharma out of India and throughout Asia. Buddhism did eventually decline in India, but took hold across East and Southeast Asia. The Buddhist teachings of the Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path aren't strict rules, and not following them won't result in punishment from a god. There is no capital G God in Buddhism. There are gods, but they're stuck in the same cycle as the rest of us. And you can actually be reborn as one if you have good enough karma. The Buddhist teachings are simply a guide to escape suffering, to leave the cycle, and to achieve nirvana like he did. The important part is using the teachings that work for you in your unique life circumstances. As the Dalai Lama once said, if you find that the teachings suit you, apply them to your life as much as you can. If they don't suit you, just leave them be. That's why there are dozens of different kinds of Buddhism, but they can be divided into two major branches, Theravada and Mahayana. Theravada means School of the Elders, and is the oldest surviving branch of Buddhism. For Theravadins, reading is fundamental. They use a series of texts called suttas, which are based on oral teachings of what the Buddha taught. They date back almost to the time of the Buddha himself.
There's a good question for the audience. Do you feel like in your past life you were good? You're like, I'm loving life, man. I must have been really good in my past life. Or did most people, are there any people that are like, I must have been a real bastard because I've had nothing but struggles? Because that's kind of part of this, right?
Yeah, possibly. I've thought that before, about my own life. But I don't see my life in one. I've had some awful things happen to me, and I've had some good things happen to me.
It seems pretty typical.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But, is there anybody that's like, man, everything is always great. It must have been just amazing. Or is it even like that? Or is it,
They might be focusing on the wrong thing. I don't know.
That's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
And are written in the ancient Pali language, so these texts are called the Pali Canon. In general, Theravada has less religious rituals than the other forms of Buddhism, and they believe the Buddha to be a much more human figure. They see Siddhartha as the only Buddha of the current era, and that he left behind his Dharma and Sangha to help other people achieve enlightenment themselves. Theravada Buddhist countries include Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, and Laos. Mahayana, meaning great vehicle, is younger than Theravada and is mostly found in East Asia. Unlike Theravada, which sticks with the Pali Canon, Mahayana has loads more texts and teachings. At the center of Mahayana belief is the Bodhisattva. Bodhisattvas are enlightened beings that, instead of leaving the cycle of rebirth, have decided to stay in order to help non-enlightened beings achieve enlightenment. Mahayana Buddhism believes that you can ask bodhisattvas other Buddhas, and other holy beings for help in this world. In Mahayana, you will see people praying to different Buddhas in the same way people would pray to saints or gods in other religions. Mahayana is primarily practiced in Nepal, Mongolia, Taiwan, Korea, and Japan. Mahayana also contains dozens of smaller traditions such as Zen Buddhism and Pure Land Buddhism. Another tradition under Mahayana is Vajrayana, or Diamond Vehicle Buddhism. This is what many people call Tibetan Buddhism. Vajrayana uses mantras or repetitive chants, drawing of mandalas, the use of secret rituals, incantations, and deep meditation while visualizing different supernatural beings to try and achieve Nirvana faster than in other forms of Buddhism. This school has a huge emphasis on using gurus or teachers known as lamas to assist you on your journey. The famous
Interesting. It's kind of like an evolution of the belief system, which I think might actually be happening. Like some of these spiritual truths and these things, they started in kind of like a primitive state. And I wonder if they're evolving and like we're getting faster and faster now at being able to discover some of these truths that were...
I definitely think some of these things are easier to chew on and easier, more palatable and more easy to incorporate when you live with your needs met.
Yes.
When you live in an opulent society. I actually think technology is going to play a major role one day. But that's just a pet theory I'm kind of messing around with, and other people have alluded to similar things.
I think you're onto
But
something.
I think that we are building something kind of like Terence McKenna alluded to. I think we're building it.
Yeah.
You know, because so much of life, you know, if you really sit and think for hours about the meaning of life, you're going to come to some conclusion of like, it's possible that you come to the conclusion that this thing's kind of like a strange loop. It's kind of beginningless, endless, you know, sort of meaningless. But in the process, we collectively are building something. And I think what we're building is going to be some technological phenomenon that plays into all this spiritual stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
I know. And
I love it. I'm excited for it. Bring it on.
famous Dalai Lama is the leader of Tibetan Buddhism. If you'd like an even better explanation of the Buddha and his teachings, I can highly recommend the Buddha episode of the series Genius of the Ancient World over on Curiosity Stream.
Well, there you have it.
very informing. Very
Buddhism.
Informational.
Yeah, there was a lot there, and I'm sure he was only giving like minor details. We'll probably have to do like a whole video on like the 4 Noble Paths and those, you know, the 8 ideas there.
It's endless.
Yeah. So let us know in the comments, guys, what you think about this video, about Buddhism. Maybe there were some things in there that he missed or we missed that you want to let us know about. And if you like this video, don't forget to smash the like button, share this with a friend, and everybody, until next time, stay spiritual.